The ship known as Isoken drifted through the void like a shard of obsidian slicing through velvet. To Zariel's people, the Nihal, the ship was more than a vessel. It was a fortress, a sanctuary, and to her, a cradle. Born within its unyielding walls of alloy and pulse light, Zariel had known no other home. Emotion, for the Nihal, was a liability. It clouded judgment, weakened resolve, and undermined efficiency. This doctrine was etched into Zariel from the moment she emerged from the gene-crafting pod, her form sculpted for precision, her mind wired for logic. Every aspect of her upbringing was designed to produce a perfect agent of the Nihal collective, a being stripped of the frivolities that plagued softer species. And yet, as she stood in the observation deck, staring into the infinite expanse of stars, Zariel couldn't help but feel curious. Curiosity was permissible after all. It was the basis of exploration, the spark behind discovery. But this particular curiosity, a strange pull toward the vibrant, messy world of Earth, was bordering on something more. She dismissed the thought as irrelevant, redirecting her focus to the task at hand, the human meeting. Earth, Zariel decided within moments of stepping foot on its surface, was a cacophony of illogical extremes. The humidity of the atmosphere clung to her skin like an unwelcome embrace, and the air was saturated with scents, charred hydrocarbons, chlorophyll, and the unmistakable tang of salt water. The humans themselves were even more perplexing, loud, disorganized, and brimming with expressions that made no tactical sense. "This way, Envoy Zariele," a human official said, gesturing with an oddly rhythmic motion of his hand. He led her into a room where a collection of humans waited. Among them was her liaison, Dr. Elliot Carrington. Zariel's neural implants provided an instant profile. Male, 34 Earth years, an exobiologist specializing in xenocultural studies. His file included descriptors such as brilliant, unconventional, and prone to unconventional methods. As he stood to greet her, she understood why. "Hello, Zariel," he said, extending a hand toward her in what appeared to be an attempt at interspecies protocol. When she didn't respond immediately, he pivoted into a clumsy elbow bump. She blinked. "Is this a ritual gesture?" "Well, it's more of a when in doubt move," Elliot admitted, scratching the back of his head. "You know, just in case a handshake is considered an act of war in your culture." Her neural processors struggled to categorize his statement, oscillating between serious and facetious. "The Nihal do not engage in physical gestures for purposes of greeting. It is inefficient." Elliot grinned. "Inefficient, sure, but it's also kind of fun." "Fun," she repeated, her tone as flat as a sensor readout. "Define." "That's going to take some time," Elliot said, motioning her to follow. "But stick with me and I'll make you an expert." Zariel's quarters on Earth were, by human standards, luxurious. To her, they were an unoptimized waste of space. The walls were adorned with colorful decorations, art, Elliot had called them, depicting landscapes, abstract shapes, and a particularly confusing rendering of what appeared to be a cat playing a musical instrument. "That," Elliot explained when he saw her staring at the piece, "is jazz." "The feline is jazz?" No, the music is jazz. The cat is just vibing." She turned to him, her expression one of calculating bewilderment. "Vibing." Feeling the rhythm?" Elliot said, waving his hands vaguely. "Enjoying the moment?" Zariel's gaze shifted back to the image. "This is ineffable nonsense." "Exactly," Elliot said, clearly pleased with her assessment. "You're catching on." Over the next few days, Zariel shadowed Elliot as he introduced her to various aspects of human culture. She attended a city council meeting where humans argued passionately about matters such as zoning laws and sidewalk widths. She toured a laboratory filled with peculiar devices, some of which appeared to serve no discernible function, and she accompanied Elliot to a bustling marketplace where the scent of cooked animal proteins mingled with the sharp tang of fermented beverages. At each stop, Elliot provided commentary that Zariel found both unnecessary and oddly engaging. "This is coffee," he said, handing her a steaming cup. "Liquid energy. Also the reason half the people on this planet aren't asleep right now." She sipped cautiously, her neural processors immediately lighting up with warnings about the caffeine content. "This is a stimulant," she stated. "Yup," Elliot replied, "and delicious." "It is bitter. Bitter and beautiful like life." She stared at him, unsure whether his comment was meant to be profound or ridiculous. By the time they returned to her quarters, Zariel found herself strangely tired. Not physically, as her bioconstruct was designed for sustained activity, but mentally. Earth, with its unrelenting sensory input and its inhabitants' penchant for unpredictability, was a challenge to process. As she sank into the chair, an unnecessarily plush design that enveloped her like a gravitational well, she watched Elliot rummage through his bag. "I got you something," he said, pulling out a small round object. She studied it with caution. "What is this?" "It's a stress ball, for when you feel overwhelmed." "Do I appear overwhelmed?" "Well," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "I figured it might come in handy. Plus, you can squeeze it when you're tired of listening to me." For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zariel felt the faintest pull at the corner of her mouth, a reflex her people rarely indulged. She did not smile, not quite, but the possibility lingered. As Elliot left her quarters that night, Zariel held the stress ball in her hand, its soft texture unfamiliar, yet oddly comforting. For a moment, she stared out the window at the sprawling city lights below. Earth was inefficient, chaotic, and perplexing. And yet, for reasons she couldn't quite quantify, she found herself intrigued. The first thing Zariel noticed about Dr. Elliot Carrington was the way he moved. His gait was less like the precise, calculated strides of her own people, and more like a series of near misses with disaster. As they walked through the human research facility that was temporarily her base of operations, she observed him bump into a potted plant, drop his datapad, and narrowly avoid colliding with a technician carrying a precarious stack of equipment. "Graceful as ever," the technician muttered as he passed. "Thank you, Greg," Elliot called back, entirely undeterred. "I practice daily." Zariel tilted her head. "Is your coordination permanently impaired?" Elliot grinned, adjusting his glasses. "Oh no, this is just my natural state. It keeps people guessing. They never know if I'm about to stumble or save the day." "Curious strategy," she remarked, filing his behavior under inefficient yet oddly compelling. The facility itself was a marvel of human ingenuity, or at least an approximation of it. Clean white walls hummed with embedded technology, and holographic displays projected data streams that Zariel instinctively analyzed. The lab smelled faintly of ozone, coffee, and something she couldn't identify but suspected was related to human perspiration. "This is the nerve center of human science," Elliot declared as they entered his personal lab. The space was cluttered with a mix of sleek devices and haphazardly stacked papers. In one corner, a small round robot appeared to be stuck in an endless loop of trying to sweep under a table it couldn't fit beneath. Zariel raised an eyebrow. "This is disorganized." "Organized chaos," Elliot corrected, brushing a pile of papers off a chair. "Think of it as a quantum state, messy and tidy at the same time." "You are attempting humor," she noted. "Always," he replied, flashing a lopsided grin. Elliot's task was to familiarize Zariel with the intricacies of human life, though his methods often seemed as unconventional as his sense of humor. On her second day, he introduced her to Earth snacks, a category of food that appeared to serve no nutritional purpose. "Behold," Elliot said with a flourish, presenting her with a bright orange package. "Cheese puffs, the pinnacle of human culinary innovation." Zariel scanned the package with her neural implants. "The nutritional value is negligible." "True," Elliot admitted, opening the bag. "But they're crunchy and addictive. Try one." She hesitated before plucking a puff from the bag and placing it in her mouth. The texture dissolved almost instantly, leaving behind a salty residue that her taste receptors struggled to process. "This is perplexing," she said. "Welcome to humanity," Elliot replied, popping another puff into his mouth. "We're all about perplexing." As the days passed, Zariel found herself reluctantly fascinated by Elliot's peculiarities. He seemed to embody everything the Nihal dismissed as weaknesses: impulsivity, sentimentality, and an inexplicable tendency to laugh at his own jokes. Yet, despite his apparent flaws, there was a resilience to him that she couldn't ignore. One afternoon, Elliot took her to the botanical wing of the facility, a sprawling greenhouse filled with plants from Earth and beyond. The air was thick with humidity and the scent of blooming flowers. "This," Elliot announced, gesturing to a cluster of bright red flowers, "is a rose, classic Earth plant. We give them to people we like." "Explain the significance," Zariel said, studying the delicate petals. "Well, roses are kind of a symbol of love," Elliot said, scratching his chin, "or appreciation, or sometimes just, 'I forgot our anniversary, please don't be mad.'" "It depends." Zariel's brow furrowed. "Your species assigns meaning to flora?" "Oh, absolutely," Elliot said. "We're big on symbolism. Flowers, jewelry, interpretive dance, you name it." She considered this for a moment before responding. "Inefficient." "Sure," he agreed, "but it's also kind of beautiful, don't you think?" Zariel hesitated. The word beautiful was unfamiliar territory for her, a concept as elusive as a star obscured by cosmic dust. "I am uncertain," she finally said. Elliot smiled. "That's a good start." Their interactions were not without complications. On one occasion, Zariel inadvertently caused a minor security incident when she attempted to recalibrate a malfunctioning holographic display. The device began projecting a series of incomprehensible symbols that triggered the lab's emergency protocols. As alarms blared, Elliot burst into the room, his hair sticking out at odd angles. "What did you touch?" he asked, half laughing, half panicking. "I improved the system's efficiency," Zariel replied, unperturbed by the chaos around her. "Well, it's efficiently freaking everyone out," Elliot said, frantically typing into a console to override the alarm. Once the situation was resolved, Elliot leaned against the wall, shaking his head. "Remind me to never leave you alone with our tech." "Your technology is primitive," she said matter-of-factly. "Fair," he admitted, grinning. "But it's our primitive tech, so go easy on it." Despite their differences, or perhaps because of them, Zariel found herself gradually adjusting to life on Earth. The human's unpredictable nature, while baffling, was also oddly refreshing, and Elliot, with his boundless enthusiasm and relentless optimism, had a way of making even the most mundane moments feel significant. One evening, as they sat in the facility's cafeteria, Elliot attempted to explain the concept of sarcasm. "So," he said, "if someone says, 'Oh, great, another rainy day,' but they clearly don't like rain, that's sarcasm." Zariel frowned. "You intentionally convey the opposite of your intended meaning? That is highly inefficient." "Yeah," Elliot said, laughing, "but it's also fun." She stared at him for a moment before replying, "Your definition of fun is remarkably broad." "Thanks," he said, raising his coffee cup in mock salute. As Zariel watched him sip his drink, she felt a faint, unfamiliar sensation, a ripple of something she couldn't quite identify. It wasn't curiosity or confusion, but something deeper, something that lingered long after the conversation ended. For the first time in her existence, Zariel began to wonder if there was more to life than logic and efficiency. Zariel's neural processors were designed for rapid adaptation, capable of analyzing complex systems and devising optimal strategies within milliseconds. Yet, As she stood in front of the food cart in a bustling city square, she found herself utterly baffled by the human phenomenon called ice cream. "All right," Elliot said, gesturing to the cart with a flourish. "This is your next cultural milestone, the sacred ice cream cone." Zariel's gaze shifted to the vendor, a jovial man with a white apron and a grin so wide it seemed to defy anatomical norms. The cart displayed an array of brightly colored substances in cylindrical containers. "These are frozen dairy products?" she asked, scanning the options. "Exactly," Elliot said. "Cold, sweet, and utterly pointless. You'll love it." The vendor chuckled. "First time, huh? Don't worry. We'll start you off easy. Chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry?" Zariel tilted her head, parsing the options. "Define the parameters of each." "Oh boy," Elliot muttered, stepping in. "Just give her a swirl cone. Best of both worlds." Moments later, the vendor handed Zariel a precariously balanced spiral of chocolate and vanilla ice cream atop a wafer cone. She accepted it with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "What is the proper consumption method?" she asked. Elliot raised an eyebrow. "You eat it. Clarify." "Okay," he said, leaning closer. "You lick it like this." He demonstrated, then added, "And try not to let it melt all over your hand. That's part of the challenge." Zariel hesitated before mimicking his actions. The cold sensation was startling, and the sweetness triggered an unanticipated cascade of sensory feedback. "This is highly inefficient," she said, her voice tinged with what might have been wonder. Elliot grinned. "Welcome to dessert, my friend." The city square was a microcosm of humanity in all its chaotic glory. Vendors called out to passers-by, children darted between crowds, and street performers juggled flaming torches with alarming disregard for safety regulations. "This environment is disordered," Zariel remarked as they walked. "That's what makes it fun," Elliot replied, biting into a pretzel. "You consistently equate chaos with enjoyment," she observed. "Because it is," he said, gesturing around them. "Look at all this. It's messy, unpredictable, and totally alive. Don't you feel it?" Zariel's neural implants registered the sensory overload as noise, but somewhere beneath the data streams, she felt an inexplicable twinge of something. Before she could analyze it further, a child approached them, holding a small robot in his hands. The device looked like a homemade contraption, its joints haphazardly assembled and its movements jerky. "Is it supposed to do that?" Elliot asked, as the robot made a sound that resembled a sneeze. "It's sick," the child said solemnly. Zariel crouched down to examine the robot, her keen eyes scanning its circuits. "This unit requires recalibration and likely a power core replacement." The child looked at her with wide eyes. "Can you fix it?" She glanced at Elliot, who nodded encouragingly. "Go ahead, MacGyver," he said, referencing yet another cultural touchstone she didn't understand. Using a multi-tool from her utility belt, Zariel deftly adjusted the robot's internal wiring. Within moments, the device whirred to life, its movements now smooth and precise. "Wow!" the child exclaimed. "You're like a robot doctor." "She's a lot of things," Elliot said, smiling. As they continued their exploration of the city, Zariel began to notice subtler aspects of human behavior. A couple shared a quiet moment on a park bench, their hands intertwined. An elderly man fed crumbs to a flock of pigeons, his expression one of serene contentment. Everywhere she looked, there were connections, messy, imperfect, and inexplicably compelling. "What are you thinking?" Elliot asked, breaking her reverie. "That your species prioritizes interpersonal bonds despite their inefficiency," she said. He chuckled. "Yeah, we're weird like that. But those bonds? They're kind of what make life worth living." She considered his words, filing them away for further analysis. Later that evening, back at the facility, Zariel found herself replaying the day's events. She stood by the window, staring out at the city lights, her neural implants cataloging the myriad of experiences she had encountered. Elliot entered, carrying 2 mugs of a steaming liquid. "Hot chocolate," he said, handing one to her. She eyed the mug with suspicion. "Is this another inefficient human indulgence?" "Absolutely," he said, settling into a chair. She sipped cautiously, the warmth spreading through her in a way that was strangely comforting. "Hey," Elliot said, breaking the silence. "I've got a question." "Yes?" "Do the Nehal ever, relax?" "Relaxation is counterproductive," she replied automatically. "Figures," he said with a grin. "You guys are missing out. Sometimes doing nothing is the best thing you can do." She stared at him, her expression inscrutable. "You are a perplexing individual, Dr. Carrington." "Thank you," he said, raising his mug in mock salute. "I'll take that as a compliment." As the night wore on, Zariel found herself reflecting on the peculiarities of human existence. There was a depth to their lives that she hadn't anticipated, a complexity that defied logic and yet seemed to hold some undeniable truth. For the first time, she wondered if efficiency was truly the highest ideal. And for the first time, she didn't have an answer. Zariel's mind was as precise as a quantum matrix, her thoughts interwoven with calculations and probabilities. Yet, as she stood in the facility's common area, observing Elliot's latest demonstration of human behavior, she found her understanding of him slipping like sand through her fingers. "You're telling me," she began, her voice even, "that this game involves throwing small, weighted objects into a series of circles on the ground?" "Exactly," Elliot replied, holding up a set of colorful rings. "Welcome to Cornhole. It's a classic. Just toss the bag and try to land it in the hole. Simple, right?" Zariel studied the setup with the intensity of someone preparing to disarm a volatile energy core. "What is the purpose?" "To win," Elliot said, then added with a grin, "and maybe trash-talk your opponent a little. It's all in good fun." "Winning implies superiority," she noted, "a curious motivation." "Don't overthink it," Elliot said, handing her a bag. "Just give it a shot." She gripped the bag, calculating trajectory, velocity, and wind resistance. Her first throw arced gracefully, landing squarely in the center of the target. Elliot let out a low whistle. "Wow, okay, beginner's luck." "It was not luck," Zariel said, already preparing her second throw. "It was precision." Despite her reluctance, Zariel found herself drawn to these small, seemingly inconsequential moments with Elliot. They provided an unexpected contrast to the regimented efficiency of her upbringing. One afternoon, as they strolled through the facility's arboretum, Elliot decided to introduce her to what he called bad puns. "Okay," he began, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "What do you call an alien with 3 eyes?" She glanced at him, unimpressed. "Clarify." "Ian," he said, drawing out the extra I for emphasis. Zariel stared at him in silence, her neural implants analyzing the joke. "Your humor relies on phonetic manipulation," she finally said. Elliot shrugged. "It's an acquired taste." They're back in the lab. Zariel began to notice subtler shifts in her interactions with Elliot. When he explained the nuances of Earth technology, she found herself less focused on the content and more on the animated way he spoke, his hands punctuating his words like exclamation marks. "See," he said one day, holding up a small device. "This is a smartphone. It's got the combined computing power of 1,000 20th century machines. And yet, most people use it to watch cat videos." "Cat videos?" she echoed, her brow furrowing. "Don't knock it till you try it," he said, tapping a few buttons. A holographic projection appeared, displaying a small feline attempting to climb a curtain. Zariel watched in silence, her neural implants registering the animal's movements. "This serves no practical purpose." "Exactly," Elliot said, grinning. "And that's why it's perfect." Their growing camaraderie did not go unnoticed. One evening, as Zariel was reviewing star charts in her quarters, a soft chime indicated an incoming message. The screen lit up with a message from a Nahal superior. Report on human interactions required. Have they compromised your objectivity? Zariel hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Objectivity was a cornerstone of her identity, yet she couldn't deny the subtle changes in her perspective. Compromised wasn't the right word. Transformed, perhaps. The next day, Elliot invited Zariel to join him on a short excursion outside the facility. The vehicle they used was a hybrid of human and alien technology, its sleek frame humming with energy as it glided over the terrain. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Surprise," he said, flashing her a mischievous grin. They arrived at a remote observation deck overlooking a vast canyon. The setting sun painted the landscape in hues of orange and gold, the shadows stretching like long fingers across the earth. Elliot leaned against the railing, gesturing to the view. "So, what do you think?" Zariel scanned the scene, her neural implants cataloging the geological features and atmospheric conditions. "It is aesthetically pleasing," she admitted. "That's it?" he said, feigning offense. "No poetic musings about the beauty of nature?" "I do not engage in poetry," she replied. "Well, you're missing out," he said, staring at the horizon. "Sometimes, it's not about what you see, it's about what you feel." She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "And what do you feel?" Elliot shrugged. "Small, mostly, but in a good way. Like, even with all our technology and science, there's still so much out there we don't understand. It's humbling." Zariel considered his words, a faint flicker of something unfamiliar stirring within her. As they drove back to the facility, Elliot made an impromptu stop at a roadside diner. The neon sign flickered intermittently, casting a surreal glow over the parking lot. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of fried food and coffee. A jukebox jatsot egi lagi dalamata sarkban, es egi pincer koson tote oket egi vidam mosoliol. "You've got to try the pie," Elliot said, sliding into a booth. "Pie?" Zariel asked, her curiosity piqued. "Trust me," he said, ordering 2 slices. When the pie arrived, Zariel studied it carefully before taking a bite. The combination of flavors, sweet, tart, and buttery, was unlike anything she had experienced. "This is satisfactory," she said, her tone almost grudging. Elliot laughed. "High praise from you." As the evening wore on, Zariel found herself increasingly at ease in Elliot's presence. His humor, while often perplexing, had a disarming quality that she couldn't quite explain. For his part, Elliot seemed genuinely intrigued by her perspective, often asking questions that bordered on philosophical. "If you could experience one thing without analyzing it," he asked one night, "what would it be?" Zariel hesitated, her neural processors momentarily silent. "I do not know." "Well," he said, raising his mug of coffee in a mock toast, "here's to figuring it out." Unbeknownst to Zariel, her time with Elliot was beginning to leave an indelible mark on her. The rigid boundaries of logic and efficiency that had defined her existence were softening, making room for something new, something ineffable. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid to explore it. Zariel had always prided herself on her unparalleled efficiency. Her neural implants processed millions of data points in real time, her reactions finely tuned to adapt to any scenario. Yet as she sat in the lab, staring at an Earth-made jigsaw puzzle spread across the table, she felt an unfamiliar sensation: frustration. "This activity is illogical," she declared, holding up a piece that refused to fit anywhere. "That's the point," Elliot said, lounging nearby with a cup of coffee. "It's not about logic, it's about persistence. Plus, it's good for hand-eye coordination." I possess superior coordination, Zariel replied, attempting to force the piece into a mismatched slot. Sure, Elliot said, smirking, but can you handle human chaos? The irony of his statement was not lost on her. The puzzle, an image of Earth's moon in various phases, was a microcosm of her experiences on this planet, fragmented, disordered, and inexplicably compelling. She glanced at Elliot, who was now humming an off-key rendition of a song he referred to as a classic rock anthem. Your species thrives on disorder, she observed. He grinned. And we make it look good, don't we? Later that evening, Zariel found herself in the facility's communal lounge, watching Elliot interact with a group of researchers. He had a knack for drawing people in, his humor disarming even the most stoic among them. So, there I was, Elliot said, gesturing wildly. Dangling from a cliff with nothing but a pair of shoelaces and my wits. That is a gross exaggeration, Zariel interrupted from her corner. The room erupted in laughter, and Elliot held up his hands in mock surrender. All right, but admit it, X, my stories are better with a little embellishment. Truth is more efficient, she replied, but there was a hint of amusement in her tone. As the days passed, Zariel began to notice subtle changes in herself. Her neural implant still operated with precision, but there were moments, fleeting and unquantifiable, where she allowed herself to deviate from strict analysis. One such moment occurred during a test of the facility's experimental holographic simulator. Designed to recreate any environment in stunning detail, it was a marvel of both Nahal and human technology. Pick a scenario, Elliot said, handing her the control panel. She hesitated before entering a command. The room shifted, morphing into a lush alien forest. Bioluminescent flora illuminated the space, and the air was filled with the hum of unfamiliar creatures. This is my homeworld, she said softly. Elliot looked around, taking in the vibrant colors and towering trees. It's beautiful, he said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. Zariel nodded. It is efficient. That's not what I meant, he said, stepping closer. I mean, it feels alive. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. What does that mean to you? Elliot shrugged. Hard to explain. It's like there's a connection, like everything here is part of something bigger. Her neural implants flagged his statement as illogical, yet she couldn't dismiss the flicker of resonance it stirred within her. Back in the lab, the researchers were buzzing with excitement over a new discovery, a mysterious signal from deep space, one that defied all known patterns of communication. Think it's another Nahal transmission? Elliot asked, peering at the data. Zariel examined the signal, her implants analyzing its structure. Unlikely. The frequency is inconsistent with Nahal protocols. Then what is it? Unknown, she admitted, her tone unusually contemplative. The signal became a focal point for the team, sparking debates and theories that ranged from rogue satellites to sentient star systems. Elliot, ever the optimist, proposed a more whimsical explanation. What if it's an alien band, broadcasting their greatest hits across the galaxy? Highly improbable, Zariel said, though she couldn't suppress a faint smile. One evening, as they worked late analyzing the signal, Elliot leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. You ever wonder, he began, what it's all for? The exploring, the tech, the constant push for answers? Zariel looked at him, her gaze steady. For the Nahal, it is a matter of survival. Knowledge is the key to advancement. And for you? He pressed. Her neural processors hesitated, a rare occurrence. I do not know. Elliot chuckled. Welcome to the club. In an attempt to lighten the mood, Elliot suggested a break. How about a movie night? You pick. Zariel considered the options before selecting a film from his database. The screen lit up with the title, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. "Oh, you're gonna love this," Elliot said, settling in with a bowl of popcorn. As the absurdity of the film unfolded, Zariel found herself unexpectedly entertained. The characters' antics were illogical, the plot nonsensical, yet there was an underlying humor that resonated with her. When the character of Marvin, the depressed robot, delivered a particularly sardonic line, Elliot burst into laughter. "See? That's gold." Zariel tilted her head. Marvin's cynicism is an intriguing contrast to his function. "Exactly," Elliot said, grinning. "Sometimes the best way to cope with the universe is to laugh at it." As the film ended, Zariel found herself reflecting on Elliot's words. There was a simplicity to his approach, a willingness to embrace uncertainty that she couldn't fully comprehend, and yet she found it strangely appealing. The following day, Zariel joined Elliot in the observation deck to monitor the mysterious signal. As they worked, he glanced at her, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "You've changed, you know," he said. She frowned. "Explain." "You're more relaxed, more open," he said, then added with a teasing grin, "You even smiled at Marvin's jokes." "I am adapting," she said simply. "Well," he said, leaning back in his chair, "I like this version of you." For the first time, Zariel allowed herself to consider the possibility that change wasn't a deviation. It was an evolution, and for the first time, she wondered what else she might become. The signal had become an obsession. It pulsed like a heartbeat through the facility, an enigmatic rhythm defying interpretation. Zariel had dedicated long hours to analyzing its structure, her neural implants humming with activity. Yet despite her efforts, the signal eluded comprehension. Elliot, on the other hand, approached the mystery with his usual blend of curiosity and irreverence. He leaned against the console, munching on a questionable snack he called alien-themed chips. The package bore the image of a grinning green alien holding a zap gun. "Do you think they'd be offended by this?" he asked, holding up the bag. Zariel glanced at him, her expression neutral. Offense is a human construct. Most advanced species prioritize efficiency over sentimentality. "Right," Elliot said, smirking. "But if they did care, I bet they'd sue for copyright infringement." The days blurred into one another as the signal's mystery deepened. Zariel began to notice anomalies in its pattern, subtle variations that seemed almost intentional. "It's not random," she declared one evening, her voice tinged with an excitement she rarely displayed. "There is structure within the chaos." "Like jazz?" Elliot offered. She paused. "Explain." "Well," he began, gesturing animatedly, "jazz sounds chaotic, but there's a method to the madness, improvisation within a framework." Zariel tilted her head, considering. "An intriguing analogy. However, this is not music. It is communication." Their progress was interrupted one night by a sudden power fluctuation. The lights flickered, and the facility's systems groaned in protest. Elliot grabbed a flashlight, shining it dramatically under his face. "Spooky, huh? Bet this is when the alien overlords show up demanding snacks." Zariel ignored him, her fingers flying over the control panel. "The signal is intensifying. It is affecting the facility's systems." "Wait, it's doing this?" Elliot asked, suddenly serious. "Correct. The signal's energy output has increased exponentially. If this continues, it could compromise our infrastructure." "Well," Elliot said, cracking his knuckles, "time to save the day." The two of them worked side by side, their contrasting approaches creating an unlikely harmony. Zariel's precision complemented Elliot's creativity, and together, they stabilized the facility's systems. As the lights returned to full strength, Elliot let out a triumphant whoop. "And that, my friend, is why humans are awesome." Zariel raised an eyebrow. "You contributed minimally to the resolution." "Hey," he said, grinning, "moral support counts." The incident left them both unsettled. Zariel couldn't shake the feeling that the signal was more than a random anomaly. It was reaching out, testing boundaries. Elliot tried to lighten the mood with his usual antics, but even he seemed affected by the tension. One afternoon, as they reviewed data in the lab, he turned to her with a rare seriousness. "Do you think it's dangerous?" he asked. "Uncertain," Zariel replied. "Its intentions remain unclear." Elliot nodded, then added with a lopsided grin, "Well, if it does turn out to be hostile, at least we've got Marvin's sarcasm to back us up." Despite the growing tension, there were moments of levity that kept them grounded. One evening, Elliot introduced Zariel to a peculiar Earth tradition, karaoke. "You've got to try it," he insisted, handing her the microphone. "This activity serves no practical purpose," she protested. "Exactly," he said, cueing up a song. "It's fun." The first few notes of a ballad filled the room. Zariel hesitated before attempting to sing, her voice surprisingly melodic. Elliot watched in awe, then joined in with his own off-key enthusiasm. By the end of the song, they were both laughing, the weight of the signal momentarily forgotten. Their laughter was interrupted by an alert from the central console. Zariel hurried to the screen, her expression growing grave. "The signal has shifted," she said. "It is now transmitting coordinates." Elliot leaned over her shoulder, his eyes widening. "Coordinates? To where?" "An uncharted region of space," she replied. "Approximately 3.2 light-years from this facility." "Well," he said, grinning nervously, "looks like the mystery just got a lot bigger." The discovery ignited a flurry of activity among the researchers. Preparations began for an expedition to the coordinates, the prospect of uncovering the signal's origin too tantalizing to resist. Elliot, however, had reservations. "What if it's a trap?" he asked Zariel one night. "Unlikely," she replied. "If the source intended harm, it could have already inflicted significant damage." "Still," he said, frowning, "it feels off." She regarded him for a moment, her neural processors analyzing his concern. "Fear is a natural response to uncertainty," she said gently. "Yeah," he said, giving her a half smile. "But it doesn't mean we should ignore it." As the launch date approached, Zariel found herself grappling with conflicting emotions. The signal represented a potential breakthrough for her species, yet she couldn't dismiss the nagging sense of unease that had taken root. Elliot, ever the optimist, tried to lighten the mood with one last joke. "You know, if we do meet aliens out there, I'm going to teach them karaoke. Universal icebreaker." "Perhaps," Zariel said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Or they may find it highly illogical." "Either way," he said, raising an imaginary toast, "here's to boldly going where no one has gone before." As the countdown to the expedition began, Zariel realized something profound. The journey was no longer just about the signal. It was about the connections she had formed, the unexpected ways her time on Earth had reshaped her perspective. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just seeking answers. She was seeking meaning. And that, she thought, was perhaps the greatest mystery of all. The ship's engines hummed with a quiet anticipation as Zariel and Elliot settled into their seats. Around them, the expedition team buzzed with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The destination lay 3.2 light-years away, a patch of uncharted space that now carried the hopes of both humanity and the Nahal. Zariel adjusted her neural interface, feeling the familiar surge of data stream through her mind. Her thoughts were sharp, efficient, but beneath them simmered something less defined. For the first time, the prospect of the unknown wasn't simply a mission, it was personal. Elliot broke the silence. "You think they'll have snacks?" "Snacks?" Zariel asked, glancing at him with a raised brow. "Yeah," he said, grinning. "I mean, we're traveling light years to meet potential aliens. The least they can do is offer refreshments." "Your priorities are as perplexing as ever," she said, though her tone carried a hint of amusement. The journey passed in a surreal blur. The ship's AI handled navigation, leaving the crew with plenty of time to speculate about the signal's origins. "My money's on sentient AI," one researcher said. "Nah," another countered. "It's gotta be a lost colony." Elliot, sitting cross-legged on a console, chimed in. "What if it's a galactic pizza delivery service and we're their first customers?" The room erupted into laughter, and even Zariel allowed herself a small smile. As they approached the coordinates, the signal intensified, filling the ship with a haunting resonance. Zariel's neural implants struggled to process it fully. It was as if the message was designed to transcend logic. "This is no ordinary transmission," she said, her voice tinged with awe. "It is multi-layered, purposeful." "Okay," Elliot said, strapping himself into his seat. "Purposeful is good. Purposeful usually means they won't vaporize us on sight." "An optimistic interpretation," she replied. "That's me," he said, winking. "A beacon of optimism." The ship emerged from hyperspace into a void unlike any they had ever seen. The coordinates pointed to a shimmering anomaly, a spherical distortion of light and matter that pulsed in time with the signal. "What is that?" one of the researchers whispered. "A gateway," Zariel said, her voice steady despite the marvel before her, "or something akin to one." "Well," Elliot said, cracking his knuckles, "only one way to find out." As the ship inched closer to the anomaly, the signal resolved into a coherent message. Zariel translated it aloud. "Welcome, seekers. Your journey has led you to the nexus of what could be. Step forward and discover." "Well," Elliot said, grinning, "that's not ominous at all." The ship passed through the anomaly, and the crew found themselves in an expanse that defied description. Planets floated in impossible orbits, their surfaces glinting with unrecognizable materials. Beams of energy arced across the void, forming patterns too intricate for the human eye to follow. In the center of it all was a structure, a spiraling construct of light and crystal, radiating a gentle hum. "That," Elliot said, staring in awe, "is way cooler than a galactic pizza parlor." As they approached the structure, Zariel felt an unfamiliar sensation, a pulse of recognition, as if the place had been waiting for her. The ship docked, and she and Elliot led the way inside. The interior was a labyrinth of shifting corridors, each wall displaying scenes from countless civilizations. "Is this a library?" Elliot asked, touching one of the glowing panels. "Not a library," Zariel said, her voice hushed. "A repository, a collection of knowledge, history, and possibility." At the heart of the structure, they encountered a being composed of light and shadow, its form constantly shifting. "Welcome," it said, its voice resonating within their minds. "You are the first to reach the nexus in millennia." Hi," Elliot said, waving awkwardly. "Nice place you've got here." The being regarded him with what might have been amusement. "You come seeking answers." "Yes," Zariel said. "The signal, it led us here." "Why?" "To offer a choice," the being replied. "This nexus contains the collective potential of the universe. Those who reach it are given the chance to shape their destiny or leave it untouched." "Shape it how?" Elliot asked. "By unlocking the paths of what could be," the being said. "But with great power comes great uncertainty." "Sounds like a Marvel tagline," Elliot muttered, earning a glance from Zariel. The crew debated their options, but it was Zariel who ultimately stepped forward. "I will choose." The being nodded, and the Nexus responded, flooding her mind with visions of alternate realities. She saw herself as a leader, a warrior, a healer, each path shaped by different decisions. But in every scenario, one constant remained: the connections she had formed, particularly with Elliot. When the vision subsided, she turned to the being. I choose growth, for myself, for my people, and for humanity. Let us learn together. The being seemed pleased. A wise choice. The Nexus will guide you. As they returned to the ship, Elliot nudged her. So what did you see in there? Possibilities, she said simply. And me? He asked, grinning. Do I make the cut in your grand cosmic plans? She regarded him for a moment before allowing a rare smile. You are essential. Damn right I am, he said, slinging an arm around her shoulder. Back on Earth, the discoveries from the Nexus revolutionized science and diplomacy, uniting humanity and the Nahal in ways previously unimagined. Zariel, now a liaison between their species, found herself embracing the chaos she once dismissed. And Elliot? He became her unwavering partner, reminding her daily that even in the vastness of the universe, humor and connection could anchor them. As they stood together under Earth's starry sky, Zariel glanced at him. Your species thrives on disorder, she said. And we make it look good, he replied, grinning. For the first time, she didn't just agree, she understood.